A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek protection in Allah from Satan the outcast. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Today I'm going to narrate to you an event that took place in my life. At about 14 years of age, I started studying the Arabic language because I wanted to read and understand the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Arabic language. One day I came across the following saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Musa reported that Allah's messenger said, "When it will be the day of resurrection, Allah will deliver to every Muslim a Jew or a Christian and say, 'That is your ransom from the hellfire.'" There are several sayings like this one. Here is another. There will come people amongst the Muslims on the day of resurrection with sins as heavy as a mountain, and Allah will forgive them, and He will put in their places the Jews and the Christians. After reading these sayings, I started wondering why the Jews and the Christians had to pay for the sins of the Muslims on the day of resurrection. In a verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke highly of the Jews and the Christians. It says, "Indeed, those who are believers as well as those who are the Jews and the Christians and the Sabians, whoever truly believes in Allah and the last day and does good, will have their rewards with their Lord, and there will be no fear for them, nor will they grieve." Here we see that the Jews and the Christians will also be rewarded if they have strong faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the last day, and they do good deeds. So you can imagine how surprised I was when I read these sayings. Also, the atheists are among the worst of mankind. They deny that there is a God who created them and this universe. Yet they were not mentioned in any of these sayings. It means the Jews and the Christians must have committed a very serious crime against the Muslims. So what have the Jews and the Christians done that they would have to pay for the sins of the Muslims on the day of resurrection? I was so disturbed by these sayings that I begged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put my mind at ease. I asked Him to let me understand the wisdom behind these sayings. It was only a few days later when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered my prayer. I had obtained a copy of the Guyana Chronicle newspaper and read of the atrocities that were committed against the Palestinian Muslims in Gaza by the Jews of Israel. The Jews of Israel wanted the lands of the Palestinians, so they were killing them as if they were animals. They were also taking over the homes of the Palestinians, or they were destroying them without checking whether their families were still inside. Then they would build new homes in their places, as if they were their legal properties. I was shocked. Words could not describe how I felt. I could hardly believe that people who we thought to be religious would commit such barbaric acts against innocent Muslims. According to Islam, it would be better to fight against oppression than to die in a state of persecution. But then I started wondering, why were the Christians also mentioned in these sayings? They have not committed any crime against these people. Well, I was wrong. Had it not been for the Christians, the Jews would not have been able to commit these crimes. Later I learned that it was mainly the Christians from America, Germany, and Italy who were supplying weapons to the Jews of Israel. To finance acts of genocide, the US gives $3.8 billion to the Israeli army every year. But since the Israeli-Palestinian conflict erupted into a war in October 2023, the American government gave Israel over $14 billion. Israel is then required to use this money to buy US-made weapons. All this money comes from US taxpayers. This is how hundreds of American companies stand to make a big profit from US taxpayers. These weapons are then used by the Jews to carry out ethnic cleansing among the people of Gaza. So here you can see how many Christians and Jews are selling their souls to the devil. No wonder the Quran says, "O you who believe, do not take the Jews and the Christians for your allies. They are allies of one another." So to have a better understanding, let us look at these sayings once again. When it will be the day of resurrection, Allah will deliver to every Muslim a Jew or a Christian and say, "That is your ransom from the hellfire." According to the Quran, another name for the day of resurrection is the day of reckoning. That is, people will be held accountable for the deeds they have committed in this world. So the Jews and the Christians will have to pay for the atrocities that they have committed against the Muslims in Gaza and elsewhere. And there will come people amongst the Muslims on the day of resurrection with sins as heavy as a mountain. And Allah will forgive them, and He will put in their places the Jews and the Christians. These sayings show how severe will be the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of resurrection. Allah's justice will be so severe that people will run away from each other. The Quran says, "On the day when a man will run away from his brother, and his mother and father, and his wife and children." This is because everyone will make claims for injustices committed against them in order to escape the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, these are prophecies from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which must come to pass. O you Christians and Jews who are religious and God-fearing, do not support those among you who are guilty of committing acts of genocide against the Palestinians. The Prophet Moses alayhi salam was a mighty prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet he never committed atrocities against any person or group of people. Neither did the Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. In fact, all those who are guilty of committing these crimes will be abandoned by these prophets on the day of resurrection. All the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala belong to one brotherhood. The Quran has described the hellfire as a place of ambush from which a person will not be able to escape, nor will he be able to endure. Also, there are various sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam which describe the torments of the hellfire. The least of them is that when its fire reaches the ankles of a person, it will cause his brain to boil. Also, it is 70 times hotter than the hottest fire on earth, and nobody would be able to escape or endure it. Therefore, every person, whether a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim, should strive to avoid the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us not think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought us into this world to murder people and take away their lands. Mankind is the highest and the best of Allah's creation. Therefore, if we purposely kill one person who is innocent, this will reduce us to the lowest and the worst of Allah's creation. It means we do not deserve to be born among mankind. Finally, O Muslims, how can you sit by and watch your brothers slaughtered by those who are tyrants and oppressors? This is a test for you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, you should strive to help the people of Gaza. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam once said, "The Muslim nation is like one body. If it is pricked, the whole body feels the pain. Therefore, we should all strive to help those who are oppressed by preventing the oppressors from oppressing them. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward abundantly all those who strive in His path, and may He punish the wrongdoers."